Chapter 3: An Upsetting Delay. By the time George recovered from the surprise of hearing that the black automobile was Nancy's stolen car, the young detective herself had come from the drugstore. "Quick, jump in!" Bess urged. Nancy instantly got behind the wheel of the yellow convertible. "What's up?" she asked. "I saw your stolen car," Bess told her. "The man drove it around the corner. Hurry!" Driving as fast as she dared, Nancy headed in the direction her friend had indicated. "It was painted black," Bess explained, "but I recognized the funny-shaped ink stain on the upholstery in the back seat." "Say, that fellow could fit the description of the car thief," George spoke up. "I wish we had noticed the license number." Nancy turned the corner, and as she continued down the street, the other two girls looked in every driveway and crossroad, but their quarry was not in sight. After they had gone nearly a mile, Nancy stopped. "The thief had too much of a head start," she said. "Let's go back to police headquarters and report this." As she was about to turn the car around, the girls saw a black convertible dart from an intersecting road some distance ahead and shoot down the highway. "There he is!" Bess cried out. Nancy set off in pursuit, but at the crossing was stopped by a red light. Irked by the delay, she put on extra power as soon as the traffic light turned green. The other vehicle was far ahead, but Nancy sped after it. Suddenly, George said, "Uh-oh!" as a motorcycle came roaring up behind them. In a moment, it was alongside, and the state trooper astride it motioned Nancy to the side of the road. "Young lady," he said sternly, "don't you know what the speed limit here is?" "Yes, sir, I do," Nancy replied. "But we're after a thief who stole another car of mine." "Another car of yours?" The officer looked skeptical. "What kind of story is this?" "It's true," Bess spoke up earnestly. "Please help us catch the man who stole it." "Well, okay. Follow me," the police officer directed. By this time, the black car was out of sight, but the trooper sped along with Nancy close behind. 2 miles of country road were covered without the pursuers getting another glimpse of the suspect. Finally, the state trooper stopped. He said that he would radio headquarters to set up a roadblock. The girls gave him a brief description of the black car and its driver. Then, taking a 2-way radio from his pocket, the officer got in touch with his chief. When he finished the radio report, the trooper turned to the girls. "Where are you from and where are you going?" he asked. Nancy answered his questions, then added her theory that the same man might have planted the bomb. That would account for his stopping to look at the yellow convertible. "We'll certainly try to find him," the trooper promised. Nancy asked that the police get in touch with her father if they located the stolen car. "And thank you for your help, officer. By the way, is there a shortcut from here to Route 57? "Yes." The trooper gave directions and the 3 girls set off. As they rode along, Bess wore a worried frown. "Oh, cheer up," George chided her cousin. "Don't feel bad because nothing came of your clue." "It's not that," Bess answered. "Now that we've lost the thief, there's not a ghost of a chance of finding the car again. He knew that we were chasing him, and now he'll paint the convertible still another color." George and Nancy agreed that Bess was probably right. "That isn't all there is to it either," said Bess. "I have an awful feeling that thief doesn't want you to reach New Orleans, Nancy. He not only stole your blue convertible, he put a bomb in this car, and now he's following us." "Even if that is true," George remarked, "what can we do?" "Park this car in the next town and go to New Orleans by train," Bess declared. There was silence for several seconds. Then Nancy said reassuringly, "Oh, Bess, we won't have to do that. If the thief stops to have the car repainted, We'll get there way ahead of him." Bess thought this over, then felt better. "Well, all right," she said, "but let's step on it." Presently, Nancy pulled to the side of the road. "Your turn at the wheel," she said to George, who nodded and changed places with her friend. Half an hour later, they came to the bustling little town of Wrightsville. "Oh, look!" Bess called out. "There's a showroom with the same make car as this one. Isn't that green sedan in the window a beauty?" "It certainly is," Nancy agreed. "But I'd rather have this yellow convertible." George had gone only half a block farther when suddenly the new car developed a strange grinding noise in the rear. Bess groaned. "Now what?" she asked. Nancy was frowning. She suggested that George go around the block and come back to the service station connected to the automobile showroom. George turned at the next corner, but had not gone far when the noise grew definitely louder. "We'd better stop," Nancy advised. As George pulled toward the curb, it sounded as if the rear end of the car had dropped to the street. Quickly, the girls jumped out and rushed back to look. Nancy knelt to peer underneath. "Oh no!" she exclaimed in a woe-begone voice. "The whole rear housing has given way!" Nancy rose, and for several seconds the three girls stared questioningly at one another. Was this a mechanical failure? Or had Nancy's enemy tampered with the housing in case the bomb failed to go off? "I'll walk back to that service station and have the car towed in," said Nancy. "You stay here and guard our baggage." Although Nancy tried to sound nonchalant, Bess and George knew she was extremely upset. "This is a shame," George declared angrily, after Nancy had left. "And dangerous," Bess added. "If we'd been out on the highway going fast, we might have been killed." In a few minutes, a tow car arrived, and the disabled convertible was hoisted up and pulled to the service station. The three girls watched as the mechanics examined the broken housing. Presently, one of them walked off to his workbench. He searched for several seconds among his tools, then picked up a small leather case. From it, he took a magnifying glass. Holding this in one hand and a strong flashlight in the other, he made a thorough investigation of the metal section where the break had taken place. Finally, he turned to Nancy. "This wasn't any mechanical defect," he announced. "I'd say someone poured acid on the housing." The girls were aghast, but there was no question in their minds as to who had been responsible. Either the man who had stolen her car or an accomplice had damaged the new convertible. "I'll get the boss," the mechanic offered. "He'll see what can be done." The owner, Dan Compton, was summoned from the showroom. He examined the damage and agreed with the mechanic. "This is certainly bad luck for you girls," Dan said. "Where was this car purchased?" When Nancy told him, he nodded. "Oh, I know Harry Smith in River Heights. He's a good friend of mine." After a moment, he added, "I'll phone him and we'll work something out." Without giving Nancy a chance to comment, he hurried to his office and put in the call. 5 minutes later, he returned to the garage, a smile on his face. "Everything's arranged, Miss Drew," he said. "Harry wants me to lend you a car. I'm going on a little vacation, and the car I ordinarily use for demonstrations will be idle. You're welcome to take it for your trip. By the time you come back this way, your convertible will have a new housing in it." Nancy's face broke into a broad grin. "I certainly appreciate your help," she said. "Of course, my demonstration car is not so fancy as yours," Dan Compton told her. "It's black and the upholstery is just plain dark green." He led them to a corner of the garage where the car stood. Bess smiled. "This suits me much better. The car is dark and inconspicuous. Now maybe that awful man won't notice us." Before leaving town, the girls ate a belated lunch. Then they started off once more. By evening, Bess was driving, and the girls began to discuss how much farther they would go before stopping for the night. "There's an attractive motel, the Cedars, about 2 miles from here," George said. "A neighbor of ours stopped there on a trip recently." "Let's go there," Bess put in. "I'm starved." Nancy glanced at her watch. It was nearly 7 o'clock, and she, too, was getting hungry. "I vote we stay at the motel tonight." When they reached the Cedars, Bess turned in and parked. After the girls had been assigned to modern, comfortable rooms, they washed, brushed their hair, then went to a coffee shop next to the lobby. I'll have this fried chicken platter," Bess decided as she studied the menu. "Sounds wonderful to me," Nancy said, and George chose the same. Then Nancy asked the girls to order for her. "I want to phone home and tell Dad about the sabotaged housing." When the connection was made with her home, Hannah Gruen answered. "Hello, Hannah. How are you and Dad?" "Oh, we're fine," said Hannah. "We have some news for you." "Yes? What is it?" Nancy asked eagerly. "Your stolen license plates were found." The housekeeper said that the River Heights police had had a tip from a disgruntled hoodlum who had been promised some money by a man and never been paid. "So this fellow decided to talk," Mrs. Gruen explained. "He told the police about a deserted cabin outside of town where some car thieves had dumped stolen license plates. The ones from your car, Nancy, were among them." "Oh," said Nancy. Mrs. Gruen went on. And they found something else, too. Oh, Nancy, you must be careful." End of chapter 3.